Hello everyone, it's time for another exciting episode of Drug-Induced Rambling, where I'm on painkillers because doctor's appointments and need to talk about random crap so my channel has content. Yay! Today's a double deluxe bundle. Double doctor's appointments, double painkillers, woo! Right. Let's talk about power. Power. There's a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. It'd be more accurate to say, with great power comes great headaches. When people are young, many think, I want to be the president someday, and not so many seem to understand power's not all it's cracked up to be. Some positions come with the removal of a lot of conveniences and a lot of crap to deal with. Example, Star Wars movie. Does President Obama get to see the Star Wars movie on opening day or weekend? Maybe if he pulls a Frank Underwood wearing a hoodie and sunglasses and hope no one recognizes him, he can maybe do it, but it's probably not going to be worth the hassle. He doesn't get to go to the movies with his friends and family to see a movie they want to see. He might get someone to send him an early copy of the Blu-ray, but he doesn't get that theater experience many share with their families, at least not without substantial preparation and inconvenience. He doesn't randomly go to the beach, he doesn't randomly go to the bar. If he made a regular habit of either of those, he just gets shot or mobbed. Even with time to fortify and secure, protection for these people is often handled in such a manner as to mitigate risky behaviors, and risky behavior constitutes things that would otherwise be mundane. So there are things you can't do anymore, or if you did, it'd be more risky or more annoying, or both. Many have this idea that power is being able to do what you want. It's better described as having a lot of people whine at you and want your position, convinced they do a better job no matter how idiotic their ideas. Is it really so surprising politicians become jaded once they've read a few articles about how they ordered the creation of a super Ebola depopulation weapon? Perhaps a more common example from the games industry. How many times has Reddit blown up at some poor art director being expected to do coding work and bug fixes? The public has a skewed perspective of what positions of supposed authority are like. This can lead them to think the president's job is easier than it actually is, or that they'd be a better president. It can lead them to think certain policies are more practical than they are in reality, and can make them support damaging policies they later take no responsibility for. Be honest. How long do you really think you would feel accountable to public appeal if your job involved sifting through their garbage, and you had to sit through the CDC or WHO side of the so-called Ebola crisis? Do you remember the outrage that happened when some infected doctors were taken to the US for treatment, and the so-called continent barrier was being shattered? Many media outlets ran with the narrative that the infected could be researched and treated locally, in the multi-million-dollar Level 4 biohazard treatment facilities that were expected to be built all over Western Africa over the course of a week or two. And people could not understand why expecting expensive biohazard facilities to just appear was unreasonable. If you were some CDC member, would you give a damn what the public thought after having to explain this single, simple fact over and over for months on end, in the face of people with no relevant credentials whining that you're not only wrong, but endangering the world? Especially now that it's all over and they take no responsibility or accountability for any of their actions. And, with the answer to that in mind, tell me, what's someone in the CIA supposed to think when they see a well-rated video about how Ebola's a CIA depopulation virus? Is it really such a surprise a culture of amoralism develops in these agencies? In 2013, arming any rebel group that wanted to fight Assad was something publicly and popularly marketed to the American public. Not 36 months later, we see videos about the apparent conspiracy to fund these groups, because public domain information may as well be a secret conspiracy if it's more than a few weeks old. The politician or bureaucrat, whoever wields the mighty pen, must listen to constant backseat complaints about how they should run things. Most of these will be completely idiotic, but nonetheless harm approval ratings if ignored. The public literally expects miracles. You're supposed to poof multi-million-dollar facilities into existence with nothing more than abracadabra. No construction plan, no funding, just poof. The truth about being in power is that it sucks, even on the smallest of scales. I used to lead pickup group raids in World of Warcraft during Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, and I was successful, but it was a constant headache. Tedious hours planning for whose friend is going to be on and bring which healer, re-explaining mechanics to new raiders, assigning redundancy after redundancy for the inevitable people that die 20 seconds in, and if you hung around on Ventrilo, because that was the voice chat at the time, there'd be no shortage of random people that got invited from trade chat, came in trash gear, died 20 seconds in, and still claimed they were as important as everyone else, put in just as much effort, and were just as deserving of loot, usually whining they lost a role. In the political sphere, that entitlement only gets bigger. Personally, I often shy away from leadership roles because I don't value the so-called prestige. No, if I were in control of some government, my main objective would be delegating specific responsibilities and roles so I can, instead of directly lead things, mostly just keep tabs and make sure people aren't screwing my policies up. That way I could cut the actual time consumption of the job down and go back to playing video games. I'm far too acquainted with power at this point to want the prestige. Blech. I care not for the pageantry. Besides, power is best concealed anyway. Think about this. If you're responsible for the well-being of a nation, who spends more time in the spotlight? Alternate history. George W. Bush is elected, but George W. Bush has a few best buddies in the CIA, NSA, and FBI that have the right connections and aligning interests, and they successfully stopped the 9/11 terrorist attack by quietly arresting those involved. A week later, Osama bin Laden is captured and interrogated by a more competent staff at a black site, as are any people that may have had access to the information but tried to see to it occurring anyway. And none of those become public knowledge, because the CIA has the same policy they have in this timeline, that being any information should be kept quiet if possible, their reasoning being the same reasoning they have in this timeline. If you announce people get caught, the next group of plotters may take extra steps to avoid being caught, and the CIA doesn't want that, and they don't want anyone asking questions on how anyone got caught to begin with. So what happens in this world timeline is there's no national tragedy, there's no war on terror. September 11th is just a boring day. Would anyone remember George W. Bush's name? Would he even have won his campaign against John Kerry? He may very well have lost. I remember the political landscape that existed in 2001 to 2004. George was the tough guy, someone not afraid to be active, not afraid to go to war to defend America. Thing is, people prefer an active leader that walks the walk and talks the talk rather than one that seems inactive and quiet. But in the intel agency game, if you make a big loud ruckus that you're watching and provoke opponents to take more precautions they'd otherwise lapse in, that basically means you're doing it wrong. The best case scenario is your operations are so successful no one knows or suspects you're doing them, and thus you operate with complete impunity. The public thinks this George W. Bush is a quiet, inactive placeholder president. He never defends America from attacks, he never sends the military anywhere, he doesn't do anything. He quietly exits office in 2004, the public at most mildly disliking him promptly forget him. He maintains some connections, but otherwise retires from public view. His name fades immediately. Maybe in 50 years he gets a headline for a day or two when some old CIA files resurface, but that's it. Doing a good job is often in conflict with doing what people want. The truth is, power sucks. Long hours, high effort, countless headaches, constant whining, complete life disruption. It's not fun. Think of all the normal human things that are now off-limits to you if you obtained such a position. It's nowhere near what people paint it as. And the public takes no responsibility. They forget their actions shortly thereafter. Coney 2012. But the people who have to deal with these activities, they don't forget. Is it really a surprise a game developer might ignore the public after the public demands an art director get coding knowledge poofed into his brain? Is it really a shock someone in the CIA becomes jaded after seeing a few too many Ebola CIA depopulation weapon videos? You have heard the story of the boy who cried wolf, right? What was my point with all this? Heavy is the head that wears the crown, I suppose. I'll see you next time. Cheers.